President Trump has touched off a heated debate with his national emergency to fund a border wall. A certain best-selling author has long been committing his border knowledge to fine print. He shares his thoughts with CBS Evening News anchor Jeff Glor.
So tell me where we are.
You're in the big nowhere.
The heat in the windy Southern California desert.
It's 109 right now.
Is searingly familiar to Don Winslow.
Mexico's just across those hills, and these are drug trails coming up out of Mexico by foot, mule, horse, all-terrain vehicles. They usually come at night.
The drug trails almost look like snake tracks.
They do. That's how you know what they are.
Winslow, now 65 and a best-selling author, has spent a third of his life at our southern border, writing 2 critically acclaimed novels based on what he's seen. After more than 2 decades, he thought he'd exhausted the topic.
I swore, I promised to myself, I promised to my wife I wasn't going to do another one about the border, about drugs. But there was more story to be told.
He tells that story in The Border, out later this month. His crime trilogy will soon be made into big-budget movies by acclaimed director Ridley Scott.
It's about internal borders, about ethical borders, moral borders, political borders, and whether we cross them or not, and if we cross them, can we ever cross back?
Winslow's been a fierce critic of President Trump. He even took out a full-page ad in the New York Times criticizing his border policies.
We want to stop drugs. We want to stop traffickers. We want to stop criminals from coming in. Walls save lives.
Do you imagine seeing a wall out there someday?
No. I've been on every mile of this border, every mile. Let's go to Cloud Cuckoo Land for a while and say you could build that wall. Build it as high as you want, deep as you want, wide as you want. It has gates, Jeff. Those gates are always open.
Winslow believes a wall would make the drug situation worse by driving small-time smugglers into the hands of big-time dealers.
What we critically have to understand is that a border is also something that joins 2 communities, 2 countries, and 2 cultures.
You think we forget that sometimes?
We've completely forgotten it.
What is it that people don't understand about what's happening there right now?
There is no invasion of the United States through this border. These are not armed people. These are people, for the most part, hard-working family people trying to find a better life. Something we used to welcome in this country. Are there bad people in these caravans? Are there some criminals? Of course. I would also argue to you there were bad people on the Mayflower. There were bad people who came into Ellis Island. But that's what built this country.
Don Winslow didn't expect to be spending his 60s speaking his mind about politics. With 21 novels to his name, he is now one of the most in-demand crime writers in America. But for many years, it wasn't that way.
You're the late bloomer.
Yeah. Overnight success, but it was an Arctic night, you know. It's the job I've always wanted, you know, and I'm grateful now that I have it. You know, it took the world a long time to agree with me that, you know, I should be a writer.
But he knew from the beginning.
It's about 6 or 7 years old.
6 or 7?
Yeah. My dad was a sailor who loved books. That's what he wanted to do, float around on the water and read books. My mother was a librarian. We were always encouraged to read. We were always allowed to read anything we wanted. And I thought, you know, if I could make my living telling stories, that's the way I'd like my life to go.
Winslow published his first book in 1991. He sold just enough to pay the bills, but kept at it.
There have been multiple times, I think, when you've thought about packing it in.
Yeah.
Giving up.
Yeah.
And so what is it that gets you through that? You're just continuing to work?
Yeah, write a new book.
Stop complaining, stop thinking, just work.
That's it. That's always it.
It's 4 miles.
Finally, 4 years ago, Winslow hit the big time with the blockbuster international bestseller, The Cartel.
You don't share this much.
Never shared it with anybody before you.
It's this view, he says, in the hills east of San Diego that gives him his inspiration.
It's a lot of times where I come to think, where I come to create characters.
Characters like those in his 2017 bestseller, The Force.
Author Don Winslow.
A raw and profane tale of an anti-hero cop in New York City.
4 a.m., when the city that never sleeps at least lies down.
The novel is set in Upper Manhattan, where Winslow once worked as a private investigator. It describes a heroin mill run out of an apartment complex.
This area works because of its location. You're very near several major highways.
Remarkably, just before the book was published, a real-life heroin mill was uncovered in the very building Winslow used to base his fictional building.
Reading the newspaper, and bam, there was a major heroin bust, I think 22 pounds, right here.
Coincidence? Maybe. More likely the product of Winslow's meticulous research. A team of one. He spends years digging for details.
This was the gas station office.
Writing 12 hours a day in an old converted gas station near his California home.
You're addicted to it.
I think addiction might be the accurate phrase, yeah. You know, it's an addiction and I love doing it.
A love and a passion that's given Don Winslow a platform to speak his mind.
I'm not interested in apologizing, I'm not interested in regrets, but I'm not saying I'm sorry about anything I've written or anything I've said.